Gentlemen, live on the Philippe Mathews Show. Thank you for tuning in wherever you are around the world. We've got him back for part 2. We are so excited. Richard Hasnote is an innovative innovation expert, actually, and president of Innovate to Grow, which is a leading front-end innovation consulting company. He's also the president of Blue Sage Creative, which is a highly innovative, rapidly growing, client-focused graphic design company. He is the author of 6 books, including this one. Can you see it, ladies and gentlemen? There we go. There's a good one. Hopefully the light's not glaring too much there. It's an incredible piece of work called Proven Practical Innovation That Delivers Result. And he is the guest, of course, on our 4-part series, The Mastermind of Innovation. He's back. Richard Hasnote, thank you so much for being with me again today.
Philippe, it's great to be with you. It's an honor to be with you. I love doing this with you.
All right. Well, you know, our last show, I watched again and again. It was amazing. I took notes. I've read books. I've dog-eared the book. I'm like, I should not be spending this amount of time with a man virtually. It's just not right. But the work is powerful. It stays with you. It's a residue there, because it makes sense. You have it in the book. It's proven and it's practical.
Yeah.
For those who are coming on for the first time or might come onto this show for the first time, give us that definition again that you did in the first show of what is innovation.
Yeah, it's very simple. It's action to make something better. Now, we usually think of it making something better in business, but as we will unfold through this series, we're going to show you how in the last episode on this, how these very best practices can innovate your life in ways that will bring power to the changes you want in your life that will make your head spin. But that's for episode 4. We want you coming back.
Nice. You're better than a Star Wars trailer, let me tell you. My gosh, I'm like, can we get to number 4 now, people? Can we just record that now? All right, so in this piece, what I was really excited about, and I'm glad we're getting to this content, you talk about generating at least 12 times more ideas than brainstorming, because in the book, you say that brainstorming is kind of an antiquated process that people no longer use. It's an old technology. Can you go into that a little bit about why brainstorming doesn't work?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Brainstorming's been around forever. And when you say it, people think they know what you mean, which is, hey, let's get some beer and some pizzas and let's sit around with a flip chart and write down some ideas. Some version of that, okay? And what you find is that, A, you don't get too many ideas, and you really don't get the really high quality ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to start this by taking my hat off to Doug Hall. Doug Hall was and is a friend of mine. We were brand managers together at Procter & Gamble. He founded the process that generates at least 12 times more ideas than brainstorming when he was working at a place called Eureka Ranch. And my crew of people took version 1.0 of Doug's work, which was confirmed in 2 university studies at Oklahoma State University to generate at least 12 times more ideas than brainstorming. So this is not Richard putting puffery out there. 2 university studies have confirmed this.
Wow.
The work we did is take Doug's 1.0 version to 2.0. And while we've not done the university studies, the people that were in on the original founding will tell you that the process that I'm going to be sharing with your folks today generates at least 20 times more ideas than brainstorming. We're giving you the low number, 12x, because that's where the rock solid.
So we're being conservative, sure.
Yeah, suffice it to say that whatever number that is double digits more than brainstorming is a whole lot more ideas. Here's what's important. It's not only the greater quantity of ideas, Philippe, that's here. It's the greater quality of ideas, because that ultimately is what's going to drive your success.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, well, that's, you're right. You have the guys and gals come over and say, hey, we're going to brainstorm, and you end up going off in tangents. You have all of these crazy ideas that have nothing to do with what you really are looking for. And at the end of the session, you're fat and frustrated.
Yeah, or worse, you think you actually have the big idea that you need.
That's really bad. Yeah, that's really bad.
I mean, and you might. I don't want to rule it out, but the chances are very low. By the way.
Sure. Well, you gave that statistic last time, 25%
Succeed.
versus 75%. Go ahead. Talk to us about that. That blew my mind.
I mean, for decades, this is not a one-time occurrence. It's true for at least 3 decades. Wow. 75% of all new products fail in the marketplace within 5 years, with the vast majority of them failing in the first 18 to 24 months. Conversely, only 25% succeed. Let me just build on that a little bit, because since we talked, I learned another major number from an exceptionally reliable source. He went on to tell me that 90% of projects fail to return the investment put into the idea, which is another way of saying, from the 10% that do, you've got 15% going from 10 plus 15 to the 25 that go into the marketplace and succeed, but don't make a whole lot of money. So you've got very few that make money. You've got 25% that last out there for 5 years, but you've got very few of those that really make a lot of money. Only about 10% of them really make good money. Wow.
Wow.
If you're sitting in a room with the pizza and the beer and think you have the big idea, this is a sobering thought for you.
It is. It's like watching Shark Tank, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's my show. I love
I love Shark Tank.
I've had Barbara Cochran on, and we've had a hoot. And I was watching it this Friday, and it's just heartbreaking, because I'm saying, oh, that's a great idea. But then when they start to break it down, because you really have to understand, these are genius minds. These are not just average thinkers. These are genius thinkers who have done it again and again and again, just like you have, Richard.
Yeah.
And they sit there and ask questions that you would never think to ask.
Yeah.
And coming from a perspective as an entrepreneur, I'm so passionate about my thing that I think I've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. And they come out with, something that I'm like, well, I had no idea to even think about that. And I remember it was Mark Cuban. I think he's good for this. He says, you don't have a business, you just have an idea. Right.
Or you just have a hobby.
Or you just have a hobby, which was, wow. So when I think of, when I found out about you and innovation, this process, and how important it is, and again, this is not just for business, ladies and gentlemen. This can be applied to every aspect of your life. I mean, literally every aspect of your life, from parenting to getting in shape, to wanting to find or get a better job or better job performance.
Exactly.
To improving your relationships, whether or not finding one, improving the one that you're already in, getting rid of the one that you're in and getting a new one. I mean, it's really a complete system of thinking and process. Now, I went on a tangent only because I was excited, in that this is something that I think neutralizes certain aspects of failure, or at least heightens the ability to succeed, more so than anything that I have been privy to. And I've been privy to a lot, but I think this is it. This is the cutting edge aha technology that I think everybody is looking for.
Yeah, so let me share the skeleton, if you will, of how you generate at least 12 times more ideas than brainstorming. And my purpose here is to really help your listeners understand that there are 4 elements that you need to get working together. Only 4, so this is not, very complicated stuff. It's going to pass the common sense test for you. It does for people that I teach this with. And so let me just kind of walk through this. The first thing when you have a creative session that you need to do is you need to bring a diverse group of people into your idea generating session. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean people who are, if you're in a company, big or small, you certainly need to bring the people in who are engaged and care about the success of the company and have expertise in whatever area you want the innovation to be. If it's technology, your technology people. If it's business model stuff, your financial people, et cetera. So you bring the right experts from your own business. But as we shared last time, there's a saying that I share with a lot of folks, and that is, it's very difficult to get out of the box thinking from people that live in the box. And that's because they only know what they know, and they don't know what they don't know. So what we do at Innovate to Grow Experts, when we run a session, we will bring in world-class experts and from around the world, if we need to, into a session who bring expertise that's relevant but doesn't duplicate what the client has. Let me give you a very specific example. We had a major international client hire us to solve a problem that they had previously hired 2 other consulting companies to solve, and they failed. I didn't learn about this until after they hired us, and the VP of marketing was sitting across from me and said, Richard, 2 previous consulting companies to whom we've paid a lot of money
right.
to achieve this objective. And I'm going, uh-oh. one of those moments.
Pressure is on. Yeah.
And so I knew that they didn't have the expertise to solve it. So fast forward, and this was in one of their food businesses. I went and found, through a lot of diligent work, the 3 top food experts in the world in their area that they wanted to be solved, that were doing cutting edge research. And here's the important part, had not been published yet. So they weren't even aware of it. It was a top professor from Cornell, Penn State, and Ohio State that we brought into that creative session. And here's what happened. It was supposed to be a 2-day session, and it was a 2-day session. But at noon of the first day, the VP of marketing comes up to me and says, Richard, you've solved it in the morning session. We have 3 ways to solve it where we had none before.
Wow.
And what I want to know, she said to me, was, why didn't we know this? Because this company is an R&D giant. Why didn't we know this? And I knew it was because these people were doing research. It hadn't been published yet, so it hadn't gotten onto their radar screen, but I went out and found it, okay? So I brought that in with their expertise, and in the morning session, they had 3 solutions to their problem. That's the power of diversity here, Philippe.
Wow, that's a man. Yeah. That's bringing it home. That's really, I really feel it. It's palpable.
Oh yeah, no, it was, and I was there facilitating the session, and it was like watching magic happen. You saw light bulbs coming on with their experts, because they were sitting at the same table with these experts and they were sharing back and forth. I could see combustion happening because of these minds coming together with the creative process that we use, which I'll get into at a later time. But I mean, so the first thing you want to bring in is a diverse group of people. Now, let's take this to life. You said, let's talk a little bit about life. If you've got a small business, or you've got a small business that you want to turn into a bigger business, yes, you want to bring in friends and family who care, but you want to go looking for external expertise. It might be some people from a local college or university in your state who are working in that field. You might look for consultants who have special expertise in that, who would love to get in the ground floor with the development of a project with you. You'd be surprised that it's relatively easy to get these world-class experts to come in and participate in these things, because there may be a downstream series of work for them if they get their fingerprints on the projects, which happens in almost all of our projects.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense.
So recruiting these people is going to be a whole lot easier than you think. So look far and wide in terms of the kind of expertise that you can bring into your session.
No, let's stay on that for a minute, Richard, because I think this is fascinating to me. This is absolutely fascinating. Because I remember, now, I didn't know of you at the time. This was 20 years ago. I remember doing having a SWOT analysis done. And for those who don't understand what that is, it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's one of those things that a lot of Fortune 500 companies use in terms of a model of innovation. I think what you're doing is far obviously greater than that. But in my archaic time, in doing that, I remember the facilitators talking about bringing in people that I would never even think about bringing in, who have nothing to do with my business at all, which I thought was automatically counterintuitive. It's like, well, why would I have the guy that works at KFC come in? I'm just being facetious. Yeah. Why would I have somebody that has nothing to do with internet technology or whatever it was I was doing at the time, that doesn't even believe in technology and have nothing to do with? Why would I have that person in my session? Can you drill a little bit more into the importance of diversity, because also I think people, when they hear diversity, they think of race relations, not necessarily in terms of different mindsets and spaces and culturals of where they are. This was brilliant in terms of going out and finding top 3 unpublished innovators, the people who are cutting edge in, I guess, the food industry or whatever it was, that this huge research and development company had not even heard of before. That is something that is out of the box. Nobody would have thought of that. I wouldn't have thought of it. And the pressure that you must have been under, which I think now you do this so often, I think it's just normal for you. But really drill down a little bit for people in terms of diversity, and how far out do you go with this thing?
Yeah, we actually go pretty far out. There's actually 3 constituencies that we will bring into a session. 2 of them we've already mentioned. That is bringing in experts within the client company.
Okay.
Bring in the external diversity that has its relevant expertise, but it doesn't duplicate what they have. And then we bring in people from my company who are brilliant and very successful people in business, but know nothing or very little about the business of the client. They are exceptionally creative, innovative people who have been very successful in a number of different ways. Let me just give you a couple of examples.
Okay.
I bring in one of the top P&G executives of all time who achieved becoming a general manager faster than anybody had in the history of the company at that time. And that's saying a lot within a company like Procter & Gamble. But because we got enough Procter people in there, including myself, I bring in Carrie McNamara. And Carrie McNamara is an engineer, but she is a wild card. She has been involved in inventing more products in the United States than anyone, from potato chips to offshore drilling. She's been involved in inventing some of the biggest new car models with the designers putting clay together. I mean, she is an amazing person. And there's a lot of interviews I have with her in my Innovation Best Practices podcast if people want to go listen to that. Some great stories. And then I just bring in
that webinar. I can't let you have that. You can't drop something like that and not give the way for people to get that.
Okay.
Stop what you're doing, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, go. What is the address for people to get that?
Innovation Best Practices is a podcast, and you can go to I2GE, that's letter I, number 2, GE.com/podcast, and you can easily get it. You can also go to iTunes and search for the same thing. And what I'm talking to your listeners to here, they can dive deeper into each of the topics that I'm going to be talking about here by going in and listening to episodes 1 through 6 that I did on the podcast. I'm now up into the 70s. These were so important. What we're talking about here is so important and so foundational. It was the first 6 episodes I did. Okay.
Wow.
So the third group we bring in are just highly experienced business people, very creative, very successful with innovation in the real world. For the third person I'm going to mention is Ryan, who's president of one of the leading outdoor recreational companies, Harvard Business School graduate, but lives in Boise, Idaho. It has nothing to do with the HBS way of thinking in many ways, which is why I love him. He's a maverick in many ways. So those are the 3 constituencies that we bring into virtually every big session that we do. At each table of 4 people that we run creative exercises with, there's representatives from those 3 different groups that are there. And so it's a very powerful and combustible environment that people come into. And we genuinely generate at least 20 times more ideas of brainstorming, with the focus being on really, really big ideas because of the diversity that you have in there. So you're right to point that the word diversity has deeper meaning than I had mentioned at that point. But just recognize that if you want to get out of the box thinking, if you want to get fresh thinking, if you want to get thinking that has bigger chances for success, get a diverse group of people in there. If you don't, you're not going to have the raw material to do the other steps that are involved in this.
Okay. Now you said there's 4.
Yeah. The second step is
what's the second one?
Yeah. Second one is stimulus. In stimulus, there's 5 different types. And again, from the podcast, you can go dive deeper into all this. But stimulus is where you bring in a variety of it can be facts. Here's the business trends that are going on. It can be, here's what's happening in these types of businesses around the world, with lots of pictures. So you see what other people in China and Japan and Indonesia and Europe are doing in the types of products that you're doing. We bring in inspirational stimulus later in a session where we feel the session feels like maybe they've generated the ideas, and we challenge them with their preconceptions of the way the world works. There's a set of YouTube videos out there called Did You Know? And they will just shake your vision of how you think the world works. We've got some customized videos that we've produced that will that take the learnings of quantum physics and just shake up your way of way you think the world works. So there's all kinds of stimulus. Let me give you a very simple story that I think all your listeners can relate to. I was a professor at Arizona State University for 6 years, teaching in the School of Management, and I taught innovation. Here's how I'd illustrate this to my students. In a class, I'd tell them to take out a pad and write down all the places that they would like to go to on vacation. When the list is in, draw a line on the bottom. When they were done, I would have them go to the back of the classroom where I had laid out hundreds of travel brochures, stimulus, okay? And it's them, go look at that and see if there's any more places that you'd want to go to on vacation. They would come back, we'd add up the number of 4, the number of after. We never, for the class, got less than a tripling of the number of ideas of where they wanted to go on vacation. In the simplest of simple stimulus examples.
Wow.
Triple the number of ideas that you get by sitting down with a pad of paper and going, oh, yeah, I'd like to go there, I'd like to go there, I'd like to go there. So that's the power of stimulus. So when you bring stimulus in with a diverse group of people, it's like a popcorn popper.
Sure, I can see that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
In the book, ladies and gentlemen, so you understand that this is real for me. This is, see, I've got highlights here, ladies and gentlemen. This is real. Page 40, the successful stimulus recipe, which I want you to talk about because I thought this was interesting. One is keep it short, punchy, and proactive. What does that mean? I mean, keep it punchy, keep it short, and keep it proactive. Those are 3 things that I have never even heard of associated with. This is why it's innovation. In terms of putting together, a stimulus group with for my diversity group. Why does it have to have those 3 components?
Here's what happens. In a creative session, you are using your higher brain abilities. And if I do what's called a data dump on you, which is take every fact that I think I know on the business and put it on 232 PowerPoint slides, you know what's going to happen? You're going to stand up and you're going to walk out of that room, right? Okay. So I'm
laughing because you're absolutely right. I hate that.
I need to keep it entertaining.
Yeah.
I need to get your interest. So what I want is key facts, surrounded by some visuals that kind of bring the facts to life.
Sure.
Okay. Keep it short. By that, I mean, there may be 20 things that you could tell people. You're not there to impress them with how much you know. You're there to inspire them to develop the ideas needed to solve. So choose the 3 points that are really important to the success of this undertaking and punch them out. Okay. And it's kind of like TED, the TED presentations say, keep it to 16 or 17 minutes. I'm sitting back when somebody's up there doing a stimulus presentation, I'm sitting up there with a timer that's got 10 minutes. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. You got 10 minutes to inspire these people.
Wow.
When that 10 minutes goes, it just happens that my timer has a very loud bell. And it will at least embarrass the long-winded person. It's like, okay, give me another minute. I'll give them another minute. And
That'll probably be me. I'm long-winded. Oh, God.
This is high-energy stuff. You want to be sparking thoughts in people. You don't want them to have to pay so much.
It forces your brain to really to hone in and laser beam into what it is that you're there to do.
Yep.
And takes the fluff away. It's almost analogous to trying to convey a point in 140 characters on Twitter.
Yes. And that's a very good analogy. So the point is, when you've got your diverse group and then you bring stimulus in, and as I said, there's 5 different kinds of stimulus, and you can go to the episodes and kind of learn more, and there's sequencing for all those, and that you can learn that by going into the Innovation Best Practices podcast. Here's the 3rd element. We know, scientific studies tell you, that all people are just about equally creative. You don't need to be born creative. You don't need to have been born under a special astrological sign or any of that other sort of stuff. You just don't. Having said that, that we know that people's creativity in many ways is influenced about whether they are a left brain thinker or a right brain thinker. Okay? So
you talk about this in the book.
Left brain and right brain people are equally creative.
Yeah.
But they are creative in very, very different ways. And I'm going to illustrate this in just a moment for your listeners.
Okay.
So when we run a big session, we have everybody that's going to be in the session take a left and right brain assessment test. And we've got a special one that we use, but they're all pretty much the same. And if you want to just go onto Google and do left and right brain assessment tests, you'll come up with a list of them that are free that you can use in your groups, okay? So we know the makeup of the people in their room, whether they're primarily left brain or primarily right brain. And then we design creative exercises specifically for the makeup of the people in the room. And I'll be very brief in this. For left brain people, they like structure. So we do a step-by-step process. We have them start off by writing down their personal ideas in response to a request to develop ideas on a piece of paper. Then we have them share those ideas and build on them with one other person. So that's comfortable for them. And then we have those two pairs of people, now a group of 4, sharing ideas.
Okay.
Okay. And the stimulus tends to be more factual than visual, for example, because left brain people like facts, right brain people like more visual. Let me give you a contrast. And to illustrate this, I'm going to give you a real example that I did. I was running a session for a large national client, important innovation project, and it was about 80% left brain people, one of the most left brain groups I've ever worked with. And I'm getting to mid-morning on the first day, Philippe, and the energy level in the room I monitor energy, and the energy level just wasn't where it needed to be. I called an audible and decided I was going to do a right brain exercise for this extremely left brain group. And here's how it went. Up on the screen, I would flash in like a slideshow fashion a series of visuals, and I gave them little post-its, and I just said, as soon as you see the visual, write down the one word on a post-it that comes to mind, tear it off, write down another word, write down another word. So I put up visuals like polar bears that had nothing to do with what we were doing, a restaurant in Greece, a cucumber, a donkey, just random visuals.
Wow.
And had them write down on Post-its the single word that came to mind. Then I took those Post-its and I kind of distributed them around the table. And then I closed my eyes and said, I'm going to choose 3 of these. And so I closed my eyes, got Post-it number 1, Post-it number 2, and Post-it number 3, and I put them up on a flip chart. And I said, now you need to generate ideas for each of those. It was at that point that the vice president in charge of this project raised his hand and he said, Richard, do you have any idea what you're doing? One of those confidence builders, right? So I said to him, yes, I do. I said, bear with me. In about 12 minutes, you can tell me whether this worked out or not. So I took them through the rest, because this is kind of like chaos, random. The whole group was doing it. It wasn't little, they weren't able to work on their own. And there was a lot of freedom. They could do whatever they wanted and sort of thing. And so I took them through the rest of the process, which had randomness and chaos associated with it. And then I had them write up their best ideas at the end. Up until that time of the moment, the ideas were twice the number and twice the quality that we had with all the left brain exercises early in the day. And I succeeded in shaking them up, getting their energy up high and inspired to develop ideas. But I really shook them up with a right brain exercise in the left brain group. So left and right brain.
What you did is you took their brain to another place.
Amen. Good.
Moved
Nice
their brain to a completely different space.
Yep.
And then the power of that is then you have a collection of brains.
Yes.
That are in a completely different space, but are able to articulate within their, their more linear left brain way of thinking. And here you are, you've blossomed this huge idea generation by moving their brain to a completely different space. And then collectively you had all of these great brilliant minds working together for a focus point. That's brilliant.
Very well said. I mean, that's exactly what happens.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Oh, it is. And Philippe, to watch this, to be part of this, it's a magic. I have a 3-ring binder with more than 100 pages of creative idea generating exercises in it. So when I call an audible, I just go to the playbook, if you will, and I pull out one that I think is really good. And we've got some of these. In fact, you could go on to my Innovation Best Practices podcast and listen to some of the Kerry McNamara idea generating exercises. Some of these are some of these right brain exercises that are chaotic and really shake people up. So you can get some of that there. So we've said 3 so far: the diversity, stimulus, and tailor exercises for left and right brain.
Correct.
The first one is absolutely critical. If you don't do this, you will get less than 50% of the productivity out of your group. And that is, you need to eliminate fear and make sure there's fun. Now, what do I mean by fear?
Oh, yeah.
There's
Okay.
a couple kinds of fear. In sessions, we will often have senior managers, VPs, directors, and that sort of thing, and people that work for them. One of the fears is the people sitting there, more junior people, of blurting out an idea and their boss going, I can't believe they just said
Yes.
Intimidation that person, right?
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
Fear of looking like an idiot in front of your boss. So that's
Right.
fear number 1. Fear number 2 is being afraid to, even if you're not afraid of your bosses, of looking like a weirdo in a session by blurting out an idea that people go, what did that person just say? So I need to create a safe zone to do that. So I do 2 things to do that, 2 or 3 things to do that. The first thing is before a session, I pull aside one-on-one, have one-on-one conversations with each of the senior managers. I tell them, not only do I not want them to be saying, are you crazy? I don't want any judging comments of any kind coming out of their mouth. I don't want to see their eyes rolling. I don't want to see their
no gestures,
no nonverbal,
Yeah.
what a crap. And I tell them why it's so critical, because people are going to be watching them.
Sure.
So they can't do it. Okay. The second thing I do is I inject huge amounts of positive energy into the session. People working tables of 4. I go around to the tables and I ask them how it's doing. They tell me how it's doing, and I'm just pile the praise on them in terms of what they're doing. We then get to the part of the session where all the groups share with each other, and I'm giving them lots and lots of praise. But here's the practical part of this, Philippe. Here's the practical part. I've been doing this a lot of years, and almost 8 out of 9 times out of 10, the following is true. The best ideas that came out of a session came from a table of 4 people working. And I go up to that table and I say to them, how did you guys come up with this?
Yeah.
And here's what I hear 8 or 9 times out of 10. I hear something like, Susie blurted out this absolutely wild and wacky idea. John said, oh, that's great, and we could. And then Sam said, oh, and what about this? And then Janice said, hey, what if we bring those both things together? Here's what happens. If she didn't feel the freedom to blurt out a wild and wacky idea, we would never have gotten to the big idea.
Sure.
It was the trailhead, if you will, for the big idea.
I'm also getting from this too, it's almost, for lack of a better word, it's almost like evangelical. It's almost a spiritual kind of feeling and process when your mind is allowed to be completely creative and free, to be able to blurt out whatever it is that you normally would have been intimidated to even just to even think it. It's like, oh, I'm near, the boss or senior management, or I don't even want to think this thought. This is a beautiful process that you do, because you're saying, hey, you guys, I don't want to see any nonverbal cues. I don't want you to say anything. And you allow almost kind of like a childlike environment where they can just go in and literally play with these big ideas. Brilliant work.
Yeah, I love your language because it's very parallel to mine. I say, let's go play with possibilities. And that's exactly what we do. We play with possibilities. And if there is that sense of play and there is that sense of fun, it's very powerful. I mentioned Doug Hall previously. If you went to his facility in Cincinnati, Ohio at Eureka Ranch, what you would find is all kinds of Nerf ball and slot machines and games and all that sort of stuff. Because early on he was into a lot of play, but what he found out is you needed these other elements of the structure also. So for your listeners, what you do is You first decide on the diverse group of people that you want. Second, you decide on the stimulus that needs to come in. The stimulus is defined. In the last session, we talked about the vision for success and the strategy. The stimulus is designed around the vision for success, okay? What is the right stimulus to help us achieve that? And some of the stimulus comes from the experts making presentations. Those Cornell, Penn State, and Ohio State folks, they each made presentations that they had developed and came in and shared their cutting edge technology with the larger group. That's part of the stimulus, okay? So diversity, stimulus, know your left and right brain makeup, and then design exercises that are going to work best for left and right brain creativity, depending on what the makeup of your room is. And third is eliminate fear and have fun. When you bring those four things together, and they all need to kind of work together,
Now this is it's called Merwyn.
No, I'm going to talk Merwyn here in a minute. Merwyn
okay, so this is prelude to Merwyn. Okay, very good.
I refer to this. I don't refer to it this way in the book, but I do now. It's called quantum idea generation. But
quantum idea.
Say it's how you generate a whole bunch of ideas, and it's really not quantity of ideas that's important here. It's quality of ideas that you get out of this.
I noticed the difference in that, because what I'm hearing is in that process that you gave, the four pieces, the four processes. I noticed that this is not something. Well, now here's the difference, ladies and gentlemen. In brainstorming, you would get probably a plethora of ideas, but they would not be laser beam focused without this process. This process gives me quality. It might even give me quantity. I don't know.
Well, we get you quantity. But
it would definitely give me some high quality ideas that I would have never been able to facilitate and come up with on my own, or with just a small group of family members and friends sitting. Mine is not pizza and beer. Mine would be cigars and scotch. That's my group. Just being honest, people.
Yep.
But I would never have generated that with looking at and I see the validity and the necessity of each of these pieces and components. And it's like mind blowing to me. I'm like, wow, I could only imagine. I would love to just be a fly on the wall to watch the process, not even being involved in it. I just would love to watch that process of watching all of these minds completely open up, literally in a quantum way. It really is a quantum way of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. I refer to it as, if you were in that catbird seat watching this, you'd be watching magic happen.
Totally.
Because it is hard to explain any other way. But when you get these four elements working together, each of one of them is powerful in their own right. Put them all together in the right way, and it does require. One of the big things that I bring to the party, if I can toot my own horn here, is the ability to make all of these things work together. Because one of my main jobs when I'm facilitating this is I'm very in touch with two things. I'm very in touch with the energy in the room. Is it positive? Is it got people really like a popcorn popper? And the second thing I'm very much in touch with is, are we headed down the path that's going to get us across the right finish line? Okay. I need to bring the project in for the client.
Let me sidebar on that, because I have to commend you and say, what do you do when you come off of that to decompress? Because I can only imagine that you are on a high's high. I mean, that is just the greatest feeling in the world. It's got to be like an athlete, reaching the field goal, or, like Michael Jackson coming off stage after a great performance or something. How do you decompress, if there is such a thing, from that level of energy? Because that's a whole nother thing. It's almost like a preacher or something, in a sense. How do you do that?
Yeah, well, I'm all in when I do it. Truly all in. I mean, I'm totally present.
Definitely keeps you young, huh?
I'm giving all the energy, and very candidly, what I do is go back and take a nap.
And I was really expecting something ethereal, Richard. I really was. But, okay, he goes and takes a nap, goes to sleep. All right, moving along.
Yeah. Well, we've got a relatively short period of time, and there's a lot we could say here. But again, your listeners can either read the book, Proven Practical Innovation That Delivers Results. It's available at Amazon in a Kindle or paperback, or the Innovation Best Practices podcast. let me touch on the quality of ideas, and in the time that I have here, I'm going to try and deal with this as simply and directly as I can.
Okay.
We have Doug Hall also developed something called Merwyn technology. And least you get too hung up in the word technology. It really is what I call the science of persuasion. And what Merwyn does is specifically measure. You give Merwyn a written statement, a concept describing what it is that you want to, what your innovative idea is, and how you would pitch it to somebody that you wanted to sell. So give us your pitch. Merwyn evaluates that pitch and gives you a highly accurate estimate of that idea's chances for long-term success. Remember that 25 and 75%?
Yes.
Merwyn gives you that number for your idea. And it gives you diagnostics about where it's strong and where it's weak on 3 basic elements, which I'll cover here briefly in a moment. So Merwyn, highly validated, acclaimed by Fortune magazine and others as a highly accurate and highly reliable tool for evaluating the strengths of ideas. And if you don't like what you first got, it tells you how you can make what you would need to do to get the idea stronger. Okay. So powerful stuff. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into this, but I'm going to simplify it down to 3 things because this is what you get from Merwyn. There are 3 things that drive your chances for success. Okay. First is the benefit that you communicate to people. In other words, what need you tell them. You have this need. Here's the benefit I can provide to you. Okay. So, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second, but I want to give an overview here. The second thing, after you've told people that you've got a certain benefit, you need to give them a reason to believe that you can actually do that. Why? Because we're skeptical.
Right. Absolutely.
We're a skeptical population, as we well should be. Okay.
Skeptical and jaded. Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. So I've now told you the benefit I can deliver, and I've given you, we've got 5 different strategies for creating a reason to believe. So I've given you the reason to believe. And the third thing that I need to do is I need to tell you how that product is dramatically different than some, most, or all of the competitive products out there today. Because if I don't tell you why you should buy this product instead of the others and leave it up to you to figure it out, you're going to figure it out on your own. And the chances are you're not going to get it right.
Right. You're going to default right back to what you were using prior to.
Exactly. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay? So let me just give it a little bit more detail on each of these.
Okay.
The benefit language you need to understand is you need to communicate what's in it for them. Let me give you a very quick example from my real life. I was years ago, I was out buying a new vehicle, and I looked at the color brochure from Ford magazine, from Ford Motor Company at the vehicle I was doing, and it said advanced stabilization control in the biggest font on this glossy page. And I said, boy, that sounds good, but I never knew that I needed advanced stabilization control. That in the marketing world is what we call a feature. And then I looked a little bit further down, and it said in smaller print, actually much smaller print, reduces rollover risk by 25%. Well, I have a need for a vehicle that's less likely to roll over. I don't have a need for advanced stabilization control.
Sure.
Don't tell them the technology, tell them how the technology benefits them. And the second element that I'll put in here is when you communicate a benefit to people, and so many companies do this, and they say, you'll get more pleasure, you'll get more power, you'll get more. And you go, the skepticism says, well, okay, maybe that's true, but it's 5 or 10% more. When you move from you get more power to you get 50% more power, just watch the difference in the persuasiveness that goes on there. Mm-hmm. More power, I don't really know what that is. 50% more power? Okay, now I'm interested.
Sure.
It just increases your persuasiveness. When you increase your persuasiveness, you increase your chances for success. Okay. Second thing is there's 5 different ways that you want to give people a reason to believe. One of those 5 different ways is to give them a guarantee. LL Bean is one of the most successful companies in the world at giving a guarantee. Their guarantee, and I'm going to paraphrase, is if anything goes wrong at any time for any reason, if anything goes wrong at any time for any reason, we'll give you a refund. Yep,
that's a benefit.
And if you ever, and the company almost went bankrupt when they sold some boots that were supposed to be waterproof that turned out to leak, and people brought them in the early stage, almost put the company in the bankruptcy, but they honored their guarantee, and it really formed the bond with customers. So a guarantee can get things done. Look what Hyundai did. They came into the market, wanted to say, hey, you shouldn't have quality concerns. When everyone else was doing a 50,000 mile warranty, they went to a 100,000 mile car warranty. Ooh, okay, well, if it's not the quality car, at least I've got a 100,000 mile warranty on it.
Right.
Okay, so you can see how that can work. And the last point is dramatic difference. And we talked about this in the last episode at some length. You need to be dramatically better. You need to get to wow better. You need to get to spectacularly better. You need to get all those three things done: benefit, reason to believe, and dramatic difference into a story, a narrative that you share with people that kind of makes sense for whatever your customers are. Now, a technology customer is going to be different than a toothpaste customer. I got that.
When I hear this, I remember sitting in long sessions and trainings of people telling me that you need to have your elevator speech. And, you know, if you were to meet, Steven Spielberg or whoever the major person, or you're going to meet Oprah in an elevator, you've got to get that elevator speech right. I never got the elevator speech right. and it's because I didn't have this element.
Yeah.
If you use this process just on its own merit, you will have the absolute most powerful elevator speech that could possibly be done, because it's measurable. It is a technology. It really is. When you hear it, it is a technology. It's a way of thinking and processing information to change behavior immediately.
Yep, exactly.
Because, as you just said, from 50% versus more power. Yeah. That's a change in behavior that does something chemically to the brain where it says, oh, that's an aha moment. Wait a minute. And if I remember correctly, is this the term that you use called, is this like disruptive marketing or disruptive thinking? Because it's a disruption in my brain.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've been doing a new podcast on the subject of disruptive just half an hour before we got on here. But it is disruptive. Here's where the disruption comes. When a competitor introduces something and all the other people in the category go, OMG, you know it's disruptive. Okay. So that's kind of like a simple sort of test to all of this. But disruptive is all of a sudden you've changed the rules of the game. You're delivering more or new benefits that you couldn't get before. You've got a business model that makes it higher value. It's however you have innovated, and there's 10 different types of innovation. Conversation for another day.
Sure.
Is that whatever it does, it really shakes people up. It gets their attention. And if it's something that I'm interested in. The other thing that I said here is some, most, or all, because you don't necessarily need to be better than everything out there. And let me give you an example, just a very quick example, if I can, about the different needs of customers. I was in the wine business. I was Ernest Gallo's vice president of marketing for 10 years. There were looked at the wine category, there were two different groups of consumers. And on one dimension, they were dramatically different. On the one hand, there were those people that didn't know too much about wine. And when you looked at their list of research needs, they wanted something, when they brought a wine to the table for guests, they wanted a brand that was going to be socially safe. How did they determine that? If it was advertised on TV, okay? It was a brand they knew, it must be popular, people must like it, it's advertised on TV. Fascinating. And you had another group of people who did trips to Napa and Santa Barbara and the Northwest, and they had their favorite wineries and all this sort of stuff. And you asked them, how do you make the decision? Do you make it with television advertising? They would respond, I would never put a bottle of wine.
Right. That would be me. I'm sorry. I'm a wine snob. Yep, that would be me.
Yeah, I am. And then they would tell you, well, it was a foggy day on a Wednesday morning. We went up to the winery. We met the winemaker, and they tell the story, right?
Right.
Tell the story. It's like they would do with scotch, right? Right. Tell stories about it, how they discovered this special scotch. So, there are consumers with that very different motivational buttons that you can push.
Sure.
So you need to know your consumers very well. And you may want to just compete for one segment or another. But that's getting to a level of depth.
Very good point. Yeah, we could really drill on that one. We'll probably have to come back and do a whole one on that. That's amazing. Just that analogy alone. So to kind of recap this, when you talk about making something that creates an OMG, oh my God moment with people. I remember, now we talked last week about Steve Jobs. I'm going to go further back for people. If people remember, there was a computer program, a word processing program called WordPerfect.
Yep.
You remember that? And I remember you had to know, all of the F keys, Shift F11, Control Alt F this, and you just you end up saying F everything.
Yeah.
And when we talk about disruptive and being grossly creative, here you have this little quirky, nerdy guy in a garage who says, you know what, I'm going to take all of these functions that people have to remember, and I'm going to make photos of them. I'm going to make little icons of them. Because he had an understanding that people are more visual than they are, quote unquote analytical or what have you. And so he took, whatever the Shift F12 was, and he made an icon for that. And all you do is you just take your mouse and scroll over that and click on that icon.
Yeah.
That's how Windows was created.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Steve Jobs came and took that to a completely different level.
Yeah.
But it was just simple. It was really that simple, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company.
And I'm so glad you made that point, because I really want your listeners to go back and listen to what you just said. At the heart of this is make it simple. It's the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. Sometimes in innovation, we love. If we think we're being innovative, it's complex and it's got 25 different components and all this other sort of stuff. You need a 232-page user manual to even figure out how to do one thing, right? Okay, we achieve your objective. This is high-powered. Pardon my French, bull. It doesn't work that way. Keep it simple, okay? There is great, great power in simplicity. Never lose sight of that. I'm glad you mentioned it.
Thank you, sir. All right, so anything you want to share? Give the web address again for the podcast. I think people need to go. I know, especially episodes 1 through 6 with is it Carrie McNamara?
Carrie McNamara comes later in the series, but episodes 1 through 6 are on 12 times more ideas. Episodes 7 through 12 are about Merwyn. So these are the foundational pieces. Innovation best practices. You can go to i2ge.com/podcast or iTunes for that. If people want to contact me, I love hearing from listeners. I put my email out there. It's richard@i2ge. That's letter I, number 2, ge.com. Love hearing from you. Fantastic. All right, my friend. So you want to give a little tease of what we're going to do next week, or you want to just kind of? No, we're going to take these principles that we've been talking about in the first 2 episodes, and I'm going to be talking about some specific case studies, including a personal case study about how I came to develop one of the most innovative graphic design companies, and that on day 1 got only national clients. And there's not a graphic design company, I think, that can say from day 1 its business model enabled them to get national clients on day 1. But more importantly than about tooting my own horn, I'm going to be sharing with your listeners principles that they can use. If they're 1-person operations or 2-person operations and they want to look like a big company with robust capabilities, I'm going to share that with them, the secrets that I used in my business so that I could get business on day 1 from national and international clients. You heard it here, folks. This is leveling the playing field innovation. That's what this is. That's what it is. You're right. This is the guy. He's leveling the playing field where you can now compete. You can compete successfully with the Fortune 500 and the major corporations, both nationally and internationally. Yeah, I mean, that's well said. I just want to add one thing there if I can. Sure, please. Because I want to build on the point you just said, because you're exactly right. This is taking the practices that I've been paid by large companies 6 and 7 figures for and making it free in the podcast. There's free apps to listen to it on your Android or Apple device. So all of this is free, and it is really leveling the playing field.
I so appreciate you, and I'm so honored by you. Thank you, Richard, for being with me today. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Hasnote. What's the web address again?
i2ge.com/podcast.
There you go. All right, my friend. We'll see you next time, ladies and gentlemen, on the Philippe Mathews Show. Take care, Richard.
Thank you.